Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, to the Mom and His Messy podcast with Stephanie. This is your host, Stephanie. Thank you so much for showing up, coming here and pressing play, listening to the podcast. It's so exciting to have you back here with us today. Let's talk about today's topic. So, we are in episode two. This is only our second episode, first episode. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go back, check it out because it talks about what we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty on this podcast, what to expect, and things like that. And who a little bit of who I am, so you can have some background on me. So definitely go back, press play on episode one if you have not already. But we are excited to have you here. We are excited to get started on this next episode. So today our topic is going to be there's no perfect parent. So the reason why I decided to make this pretty much the first episode because the first episode wasn't really talking too much about our topic. But the reason why I wanted to make this our first episode of the podcast is because I feel like there's just so much going around on social media and things like that that make us feel like other parents got it all together. And I think that is so far from the truth. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit um, and just kind of dive in and get into what it means to see somebody look like the perfect parent, but not really know what's going on behind the scenes and things like that. So let's get in. Let's dive in. Let's dive in. All right. So squashing that perfect parent paradigm. Just a little quick definition of what paradigm is. It's just a standard of perspective or a set of ideas. So a lot of times people will see other parents and think, oh my gosh, they got it all together. You know, the kids look good put together. They're on time. They have things packed in their, I don't know, snack bag. Everything is, they don't forget things, everything is together. But let's talk a little bit about that. The season in my life where I felt like I was so imperfect as a mom was probably when my kids were about toddlers. There was just a lot going on. I'm a single mom, which I talked about in episode one. And there were just so many moms that I felt like had it all together. Every time I went to like a kids event or a show or a game, I felt like all these moms, like, they just knew what they were doing, and I was just kind of swinging by figuring it out as we go. But I met so many moms that would um, judge other moms about like how their kids were dressed that day or how their kids behaved. And I also met people that didn't have kids that would love to give their input on what they would do if they were a mom, or, my kid would never act like that, or they would judge other moms for, I don't know, not hounding down on their kid for misbehaving, or why their kid misbehaves is because, they're not strict with them at home or they don't teach them manners. Like, just making all these judgment calls that I just felt was very unnecessary because we never know what goes on in the life of another parent. But the biggest thing is now social media is so huge. And I feel like we see the perfect picture that people put up on social media and we don't know what really happens behind the scenes. So we cannot judge based off of a picture. We can see what they look like, but we don't know what's in their hearts and their minds. And we can never try to put ourselves in that person's position or try to say that they have it all together, that they're perfect, and that we need to try to be more like them because you honestly don't know what being their child is like. So the best way to know those things is by actually knowing the kid themselves. I would talk to so many kids when I would go to a game and just like, chat with them and just kind of be fun around them. And they're like, they would tell my kids, your mom is so fun, your mom is so fun. And I'm like, do your parents not play with you? Like, I just thought that in the back of my head. Like, I didn't feel like I was that fun. I was just trying to make conversation with them. But the only thing that came to my mind at that time was, you know, maybe their parent doesn't have time to play with them. Maybe they look like the perfect parent, they got it all together, but maybe they don't spend time with their kids, you know? And you never know what happens. So I never judge any kind of parent that I see, mom, dad, whatever it may be, whatever's happening at that moment, how you see a kid behave. You don't know what you don't know what's happening in that person's life. So the biggest thing is that our mentality when we see a picture perfect family, we try to live up to that, and it's not real. It's not real. Being a perfect parent, you can't be a perfect parent. You can only be the best parent that you can be. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Um Getting to know yourself, getting to know what you bring to the table, getting to know what your kids like and what they don't like is so huge in showing up as the best parent that you can be, because if you don't know those things, you can never be a great parent for them, because you don't know what they need from you. And that was something I had to learn. A lot of times, I was brought up in a Hispanic household, so a lot of times it's just whatever my parent says goes. That's how it is. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the wrong way to parent. I just don't think it's the best way that I can show up as a parent. So, again, the paradigm of seeing somebody else and how their kids behave, they may be the best behaved kids. We may think they're great parents or the perfect parent because their kids behave, but you don't know if they're behaving out of fear of the parent or if they're behaving out of respect of the parent. We don't know the difference. So we cannot place that huge load on ourselves that we have to be this perfect parent that we see on social media, that we see on magazines, or how parents carry themselves as, stars themselves, because Lord knows that there's some dirt behind that. But that's something that I wanted to touch base on, because I try to paint myself as real as I can be on social media, but you also try to make it look pretty because it's social media. So stuff that doesn't look pretty doesn't really get you know, any kind of feedback, any kind of good vibes, any kind of you don't get that much attention if it's not pretty. So you have to try to make it look pretty, but also try to make it look as real as possible. And I used to love seeing those moms who would just like put up a picture of them playing with their kids and their house is not perfect. Their house is not super cleaned up. And I'm like, yes, this is real parenting. Like, parenting is not picture perfect. Honestly, your house is probably going to look more of a mess than it ever will be clean. But a lot of people will post the clean pictures and not the pictures of them actually having fun with their kids, but their house is not perfect. And it's okay. It's okay. So, our next topic is going to be that we are imperfect. And let me tell you, it is okay. It is okay to be imperfect. So, perfect is not something that I feel that we can achieve as humans. That's why Jesus came down and died for our sins, because we are not perfect. And in the word of God it says we are man and we are full of sin. It says in Romans 3:23 to 24 that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. So that just tells me that, he expects us to sin. We wake up and we sin. We are not perfect, and it's okay. It's okay. And we cannot expect to be perfect people. Therefore, we cannot be perfect parents. So that is huge. You have to learn to be okay with your imperfections and kind of just learn what they are and see what you're good at as a parent and thrive on the things that you're good at as a parent instead of focusing on the things that you're um not so great at. Like, maybe you don't hold great conversations with your kids. Maybe you don't do that, but maybe you have a good time playing with them, or maybe you have a good time doing activities with them. So thrive on those things that you have the words aren't coming to mind, but thrive on those things that you do better. That's what I'm trying to say. Thrive on those things that you do better rather than focusing on the things that you may see other parents do great at, and you're like, man, I'm not like that. I should be like that with my kids. If it's something that your kid needs, then great. But if it you can try to strive for that. But if it's something that you just don't know how, like maybe you didn't see that growing up from your parent, and it's hard for you to show it as a mom to your kid or as a dad to your kid. So we got to think about those things, and we have to self reflect on our imperfections and be okay with our imperfections and learn how to thrive on those things that, God has blessed us with. So a couple of scriptures here that brought up to mind to try to help you understand where I'm coming from with this is Psalms 51:5. This is the Common English Bible version, and it says, yes, I was born in guilt and sin from the moment my mother conceived me. But then also Jesus says in Luke 5:31 through 32, Common English Bible version, he answered, healthy people don't need a doctor, but sick people do. And I didn't come here to call the righteous people, but sinners to change their hearts and lives. So he's not here for the perfect people. Perfect people don't need Jesus, right? So it's okay. It's totally fine to be imperfect. But what we want to do is we don't want to stay there in the moment of guilt and sin and be like, oh, it's okay to sin and I'm just going to be fine with it. But more like God knows that I'm a sinner and I cannot thrive on that guilt and be and just meddle in there and just stay there and not try to move towards something better, because he calls us to be in him and to be better. So knowing this, I know that God doesn't expect me to be perfect, but to come to him and allow him to make me righteous, because on my own, I know that I cannot. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to not have it all together. It's not a problem. Like, don't see that as a problem, but just, if it's something that bothers you, then strive every day to try to make something a little better, but also something that you're not trying to pull out of the woodworks from you that you never even had an example of doing. For those kind of things, I would definitely, me personally, I would just pray and ask God for wisdom on those things, or seek somebody who is wise on those things. Like maybe like I'm not too good with talking about my emotions. Definitely have a fault on that one. So me trying to sit down and have a talk with my kids about their emotions is not necessarily my strong suit. So for that, even though I'm not strong in that area, I notice that and I'm okay with that, and I do try to help myself in that area as well. And I don't try to stay closed to them either. Like when they want to talk to me about their feelings and things like that, I let them open up. But I also know that I am not the best person to talk to about those things. So I go ahead and I have them speak to counselors, people that I trust, people that are God-fearing people that I know will help them get through the emotions that I cannot. And that's what I mean about being okay with those things that you're not 100% wonderful at, but knowing your imperfections, knowing those things that you don't thrive in, and trying to find a way to still allow them to have that in their life, but maybe not coming from you specifically. So one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic and speaking to you guys about it was that my pastor, when he preaches, he always says, do I have permission to be human? And I always think in my head, like, yeah, of course you have permission to be human. We are human. Like, there's no other way to be. I'm not trying to strive to be anybody else. But being human is to be human is to be imperfect. Like, we are not gods. We're not trying to be perfect. So my thoughts are always, yes, be human, be who you are. They're people, even though you see those people that may have perfect parenting down pack, quote unquote, on social media, they're human and they get things wrong and they do things incorrect. And it's okay. It's okay to do that. We're not trying to show our kids that we're perfect. I feel like when we try to show our kids that we're perfect and we do no wrong, that it puts such a pressure on them to be perfect as well and to not come to you with their mistakes, and that they don't know what it is to make a mistake and it be okay because they expect them needing to be perfect because you need to be perfect all the time. And that's something that's a lot of pressure. It puts a lot of pressure on a kid, especially when they become teens and they're trying to figure out what they want in life and who they are. So trying to be perfect on top of that, um, it really messes with them mentally. And I can say that because my daughter she struggles with that. I tell her all the time, and I by no means tell her that she needs to be perfect. No, no, no. But I noticed that in her, that if it's not perfect to her, that she won't like it. She'll throw it out. She won't do anything with it, or she'll be like, no, 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 we can't use that. It's not the way I want it. Most of the time, it has to do with like grades, things like that, or something that she's trying to create. She doesn't want to ever show anybody anything because she never feels like it's perfectly done. And I tell her time and time again, it's okay if it's not perfect as long as it's authentic. It's okay if it's not perfect as long as it's authentic. So, a lot of times people want us to be blameless and always perfect, but it's an unreal expectation. And it's an unreal expectation for us as moms. It's also an unreal expectation for them as kids. So, you can't expect our kids to not emulate what they see. So if you're a person that walks around and struggles with perfection, then they may as well, or they may not. That's what I mean about you cannot judge a parent by how the kids are acting because a lot of times, and I say this from experience, a lot of times the kids lash out because they don't like the correction they're getting from that parent. But we do have permission to be human. We do have permission to be imperfect parents. And it's by no means us trying to say, we made a mistake and it's okay to make that mistake and we don't need to apologize for it. But it's more like, okay, I acknowledge that I lack in this area. So let me try to see what I can do to kind of make up for it in another area that I thrive in as a parent. It's okay to apologize to our kids for doing something wrong. So this is something that I personally wasn't grown up seeing, which is why I want to show my kids that it is totally okay to apologize. Um, my not I wouldn't say my mom. I think my mom, she kind of, well, not in the beginning. Sorry, my thoughts are running through my head right now, but they didn't apologize to us as kids. Not really. I think my mom started apologizing to us once we were adults. But when we were kids, if they did something wrong, or like let's say, for example, let's say I got caught doing something wrong, but I didn't really do the wrong thing. I was kind of pushed into doing it, or I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, but I didn't actually do anything wrong. Just because I was at the wrong place, I got punished for it and, like beaten for it. Because let's say the truth here, let's say the truth. And then when they found out the truth, it was like, oh, shoot, she really didn't do anything wrong. But there was no apology. There was more just like, oh, let's not ground her type of thing. Which to me, I don't know, maybe it was hard for them to apologize. They never saw that in their parents, so they never thought it was okay, but I never saw it in my parents, and I feel like it's something that's needed. Like our kids need to be okay with knowing that apology and apologizing to people for doing wrong is normal and it's something that should be done. That you shouldn't just do something wrong and hurt somebody and be okay with not apologizing, just kind of dust it under the rug and do something else to try to make them happy because that's not really a healthy way of living. And it's not a healthy relationship either. So sometimes I struggle saying sorry to them. Sometimes I have to reflect, pray, and ask God and say, Lord, give me the strength to apologize for this because I totally messed up. But then I tell them, it could be a day later when I gather the strength to do it, or it could be right away. Like when I feel like I messed up and it's right away, I tell them, I say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to say that like that. I'm sorry if I hurt you. And I try to say it as soon as it comes into my spirit and like it bothers me because if I don't say it right away, then I feel the need to like not say it at all. And then that becomes a problem. So be okay with being imperfect. It's quite all right. And be okay with apologizing for mistakes because Lord knows that we make them. We make them big time. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. The next topic I want to talk about in for this episode is that our kids are borrowed. They are not our own. So the my mentality on this, if you haven't heard the first episode, I am a Christian woman. So my mentality on this is that my kids are a gift from God. So what do I mean by this? They're a blessing. They're not my property, but they are something that was gifted to me as a mom. They are my presence, from God. So I'm not to treat them like they are property. And I know that there are many kids that struggle with this because I've talked to a lot of kids in my lifetime and especially Hispanic kids. I swear, I don't know if it's just a Hispanic dynamic or what, but our kids try to own, our parents, try to own our lives. Like they can tell us what to do, they can tell us what to wear, they can tell us what we're going to be when we grow up, like, and we have to listen to them. And if we don't, then we're completely incorrect. And um you know nothing in our life is going to go right because we didn't listen to them. So that's the kind of parenting I grew up with, and it's definitely a hard mentality to break because let me tell you, when my kids were younger, when your kids are little, right now my kids are teens, but when the kids are like babies and toddlers, you are their direction. You are telling them what to do because you're giving them a guideline. You're their example, right? But there comes a point where they come out of that toddler area, and they are now in a new era in their growing up, and that is the tween era. And a lot of parents that listen to this, you may be in that era, and God bless you. I'm gonna pray for you because let me tell you, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. But that is the area where they challenge you. They challenge you, and now all of a sudden, they don't think the way you do, and they never said that, and they never wanted to be this when they grow up. That was just us putting it on them. So when you start hearing kids say that, you kind of have to bring yourself back a little bit and be like, okay, am I treating them like they're something I own, like they're my property? Or am I treating them like a blessing? Am I treating them like they're God's property? They're God's blessing, and I'm just here as a vessel to help them grow, to nurture them, to bring them up. And it's not always easy to think about it that way because you want to keep them from harm and you want to tell them what to do to try to keep them from harm. But at the same time, they have their own a life that they need to lead. They have their own trials that they need to go through. They have their own story that they're going to write. And it's not up to us. It's not up to us to determine that. So, being brought up in an environment where my, you know, one of my parents, I'm not going to say specifically who, but one of my parents used to be like literally, they would tell me, I own you. I tell you what to do. You do what I say. What I say goes. So it didn't make me feel good. I'm like, that's not right. I am my own person. And then you struggle trying to find out who you are because you're always trying to be, um, as a kid, you're always trying to be what they want you to be because you're thinking about that. Okay, they're going to tell me what to do, you know? And then there's like the total twist of this I own you mentality where they do wrong to the children. They abuse the children and they do things to kids that kids should never live through, because they feel like that's their property. And that is so incorrect, so far from the truth. And we have to see sometimes, this mentality of our kids are borrowed has helped me a ton to try to take a step back whenever I want to tell my kids, you shouldn't be doing this, you need to be doing that. And I'm not saying it in the way of like taking them away from bad things like drugs or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're trying to build their future with them and you want them to do one thing, but they're leaning towards something different. So you have to be okay with them building their own story and writing their own chapters, because at some point we do have to let go. And they're not to be held on to and just coddled and put away in a box and to just, say, okay, that's mine. You can't touch it. They have to be okay to grow. So, um, there's parents that think like that. You don't do anything without me knowing and approving of it, even with them as adults. I'm talking about like kids that are trying to find their own way through life, and they're adults, and parents are still trying to control them because they feel like that's their property. So I really don't agree with that mindset at all. I believe that that kind of mindset of, my kids are my property, it causes trauma. It causes scarring to a child's mindset. And it took me a lot of praying and a lot of healing to move away from that and to try to activate a different type of parenting for my kids. So I had to see that my words at a certain point in their life was hurting them. And I had to try to revamp how I said things to them and realize that I was portraying the parent that I saw growing up, and I didn't like seeing that as a child. So why would I want to show my kids that as well? So I had to, try to quiet the voices of people telling you how to parent, because people will try to do that. They'll try to tell you how to parent, and you have to see what works with your kids and what works with you, and pray without ceasing, y'all. Pray without ceasing, but also listen to the wise. So if you have a family or a friend or somebody that you look up to, role model that kind of sets that tone of parenting style that you want to give your kids, then I would ask them for help on how to move in that, how to activate that and how to be that type of parent. So, a scripture I wrote down here, Psalms 127:3, to go with this topic. It says, no doubt about it, children are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a divine reward. So, this is huge. God gives us these humans as our own, but they are not our property. They are a blessing. Also, Luke 18:16 says, then Jesus called them to him and said, allow the children to come to me. Don't forbid them, because God's kingdom belongs to the people like these children. So this is a huge reason why when our kids are little, as Christians, we dedicate our kids to the Lord, because we want God to know that we're giving their life back to him, and that we want him to be the center of their life, and we want him to guide them, and we want him to cover them and protect them. So this we're coming towards the end of this episode, but the last part of this episode is just talking about being the best parent that you could be. I talked a lot about, that there's no perfect parent, squashing that paradigm. I talked about how we are imperfect and it's okay. I talked about how our kids are not our property, but let's talk about how we can strive to be the best parent that we can be, even with terrible upbringings, or even if you had a great upbringing. I feel like when you have a great upbringing, it's easier to be a great parent, or to focus on those things that you're good at as a mom or as a dad. I'm trying to fit both in, but the reason why I called this Mom and Is Messy is because I am a mom and I always felt a mess. I did. I always felt like raising my kids, I was a hot mess. But in my perspective as a mother, um, being the best that I could be for my boys is different than as what a father would think of. So to me, my best ability is raising them raising them the best way I can, but never stop striving to be a better parent. So I did read a lot of parenting books, because I did not trust going to the source of my upbringing. I didn't trust going to my parents and asking them for advice. And there was a season in my life where I wasn't even talking to my parents. So I couldn't even go to them and say, hey, I'm struggling with this with my son or my daughter, and what should I do? Now that they're teens, thankfully, I do have a better relationship with my parents. So sometimes I can ask them, but most of the time I just ask them for prayer just because the type of upbringing I had as a kid, it's not really an example that I want to set for my kids. So just striving to be a better parent, if that means listening to podcasts on better parenting, and I'm not talking about perfect parenting, I'm talking about trying to do better than what you are now because you're struggling and you don't know where to start. That's the kind of parenting help I'm talking about. And guys, it's okay. Like, ladies, it's okay to go and get help, like professional help. If you're struggling because you're stressed out and life is stressful and being a mom is stressful, it's okay to go seek assistance. It's okay to get counseling. It's okay to do those things because those things help us grow. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I haven't done it yet. Okay. I haven't done the counseling thing yet. I tried it twice, did not like my counselor. I was like, not gonna work. But I do have a way of talking things out with God. So I feel like that's my counseling. And when I get to a certain place in life where I'm completely like crowded and my thoughts are crowded, I do speak to someone who I feel is wise and who gives an example of parenting that I want to give to my kids. And, that to me is kind of my counseling. I air it all out and then we talk about it and we kind of go from there. So to continue striving to be a better parent just means that you don't know it all. You're not trying to prove that you're Miss Smarty Pants and that you know everything and that you're the best parent ever. But more or less that you're growing. Your kids have different needs in different stages in your life. My heart goes out to those parents and moms who struggle with kids with certain mental disabilities. Like, you are strong, girl. You are strong. Let me just tell you, because I don't know. I really don't know if I could do it. The one disability that comes to mind is just, kids who are autistic. And um, like, I have nephews that are autistic and I love them dearly, but do I know if I can parent them the way that they need it? No, heck no. And they have I see the way their parents parent them, and I'm like, man, they really have patience. And they may not see it that way. They may not see like they have patience, but when I see them parent, I'm awed by how much they give to their kids because I don't know if I would be able to be that parent. So be the best parent that you can be for your kids. Let's stop trying to model other people that don't have kids like our kids, that don't have the upbringing like our upbringing, and try to just strive for a better version, a better version of being a single mom. For me, it's a better version of being a single mom. Um, for others, it may be a better version of being a parent that has the other half, but the other half is never home. For others, it may be being a widowed mom, being a widowed father. Um, and the list goes on. The list goes on, but just striving to be the best parent that your child needs, um, with whatever season they're in, whatever age group they're in. My version of being the best mom of when my kids were toddlers does not work in this season of teenagers. It doesn't work. So I have to grow. I have to look for something else. I have to continue learning. I have to continue being okay with messing up over and over again, but also trying to strive to be the best mom that I know how to be for them. All right, guys. So this is the end of the episode. I hope you guys, felt encouraged by this. I hope all moms on here feel like they're not alone and that they're not the only one thinking this, because social media is deceiving and news is deceiving, and you see a lot of bad things happen to kids. A lot of bad things happen to kids. And it makes me sad as a mom to see kids go through this, but at the same time, we can only try and be the best for our kids. So I hope you guys learned. Because let me tell you, this brought me back a little bit. I think I wrote this episode probably in the beginning of my 2 years ago when I first started going through this whole parenting journey on another level. Let me tell you, it was a whole other level. But it brought me here nonetheless. And here I am trying to help out all you moms out there get through the storm, get through the journey. I would say it's like a hike, you have highs and you have lows and you have beautiful views and you have views that kind of make you want to smack a bug and be like, get away from me. But but it's a journey. Motherhood is a journey, and um it's the only journey that you can be with your kids. So enjoy it, try to enjoy it. Okay, okay. Let's try to paint our picture even though it's not perfect. All right, y'all. I will see you on the next episode. Stay blessed. Stay prayed up because we need it. Stay prayed up. All right, take care. Bye.